Okay, we're live.
Oh, cool. Okay, so let's start the meeting today. So I'm Yihong. So yeah, sometimes it's hard for me to say all of your name because the thing I saw is actually the GitHub account. So if I pronounce your name incorrectly, please forgive me. And so my name is Yihong, and I work for trying to improve the Node.js in the shared library view. For maybe 1 year, I started to join the Node.js community, I think 1 year ago. Um, so I have been trying to uh, enable the shared library view in the current master branch and also backport to version 8 and version 6 already. So I think right now you can try to build a Node.js library as a shared library by specifying the dash dash share. So I think some of you have already tried it. So you will try to build a Node.js as a shared library. I also try to fix some test case failures when we build a Node.js as a shared library. So right now we're also trying to add a CI task. Then the CI task will help us to verify the pull request in share library view. So that's for me. So I think can we go through the list in the attendee, and people can talk about yourself and what's your interest in and what you are working on. So let's start from the Girish.
Yeah. Hi everyone, I'm Girish. I work for IBM, colleagues of Michael Lawson and Yu Hong. Basically started working with Node.js since 2013. Was part of porting Node.js and libuv on IBM platforms, but for most recently involved more into other platforms as well. Basically active in the community, looking at different aspects, prominently from an end user's perspective, looking at issues which are raised by the known Node.js contributors, and just want to make sure that the users and the ecosystem's perspective towards Node.js is really good. So that's my priority. From a shared library perspective, I have a lot of interest both from a lot of issues which I addressed in the community as well as some of the products which IBM is running. So I have specific proposals. Probably once the introduction is over, I can talk about that in my turn. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Girish. So how about Gabriel?
I'm Gabriel. I'm from Intel, and I've been working with Michael on an API. And so in terms of embedded, I'm interested in how this would look like from the NAPI side, like what kinds of APIs we would be adding in order to support setting up and tearing down node environments. And I'm also thinking about the threat safety impact of this. So that's my side of this.
Thank you. So how about you, Michael?
Michael Dawson. I'm one of the Node.js collaborators, a member of the technical steering committee, and as mentioned by Gabriel, working on an API, as well as with the other IBM members. I'm interested in this area in that I think that, embedding Node.js into other processes and to other sort of existing applications is important. And, I see that we've made enough progress on an API that we should start thinking about, can we expose an API that makes it easier to do that in a more standard way, get more documentation in place, and to, I'm hoping we can drive that based on, what I've seen working fairly well in the modules working group is that they're coming up with a set of, different sort of use cases, driving those use cases into requirements, and by capturing that information, will make it a lot clearer, what we need to do in core to support those, and to use that to drive and move forward.
Okay, thank you, Michael. And Alexis?
Yeah, I'm next. Alexis Compiler here from Johnny Systems. We're companies involved in the Node.js community, helping maintain Node on Windows, but that's not the reason why we're here. We also have another project where we maintain a fork of Node.js for Android and iOS. And in that project, we let users embed Node as a shared library inside an application for iOS and Android. So embedding is a core scenario there. And what we get from Node right now works for us, but we have a few things that we'd like to track as potential improvements, things that have come up. So we might have some input here. That I will discuss later on, I think. So that's all for my introduction.
Okay, thank you, Alexis. And the next one is Jem.
Hi, I'm Jaime Bernardo. I'm here from Genea Systems, from the Node.js mobile project, like Alexis, where we embed Node.js on iOS and Android. Alexis pretty much said everything that's needed about it, and we'll probably talk about this later.
Okay, thank you. And the next is Alexei.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alexei Kuzmin. I work at Microsoft, but most of the time I spend on working on Electron. And we obviously embed Node.js. And mostly I would just want to understand more clearly what's going on there and what are the plans for the future.
Okay. Thank you. And Anna?
Yeah, hi. I'm Anna. I'm one of, like Michael, I'm on the Node.js Technical Steering Committee. I've been a Node.js core contributor for like 2.5 years now or so. And I've been like one of the people who's most active on the C++ side of Node. And, I'm currently working on worker support for Node, which is kind of like embedding into Node into itself. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for your work on the workers. Yeah, those changes are great.
Yeah, I'm excited to make that happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And the next is Hassan.
Hi, this is actually Dave. I've got Hassan with me as well. We work for a product in IBM called IBM Integration Bus, and we've been embedding Node.js for some time. My key concerns are really around maintainability. So the life cycle of the Node.js releases is typically shorter than our life cycle, so we need to upgrade major versions within our service stream, and we've hit a few pain points around that upgrade. So anything we can do to work to more standardized APIs and reduce that pain is something we'd definitely be interested in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So, Nitish?
Hello, I work at Slack, and I also mainly work on Electron. So like through this call and later, I would like to understand more and yeah, like Alexei said, plans about the future for embedding.
Yeah, thank you. And next, Roger.
Hello, I'm Roger. I maintain the WJS project where the Node code base were redistributed as a shared library, and I'm interested in WJS. Regarding the Node part, it is integrated with the Chromium web engine. So many of the work on Node is that is to resolve the conflicts with the settings like V8 settings in Chromium, as Chromium use different settings as Node. So I'm interested in what's happening in the Node.js project, starting or stopping the Node instance, and like in the multi-thread environment, like workers, because you know, in NW the Node already works in the web worker environment. And I'm also interested in how to work better with third-party binary modules. As for Node.js, the binary modules would depend on Node.exe, and we like to make it depends on Node.dll and something like that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Roger. And next, Trevor.
Hello, yes, my name's Trevor Dolby. I work for IBM in the application integration area along with Dave and Hassan. I'm mostly interested in future plans, but also very much like Roger, we've seen some issues on Windows trying to embed and then use binary modules. So I'm very interested in anything, any work that would make that easier and generally make our lives simpler as far as that goes. Thank you.
Thank you. Yulong Wang.
If you're speaking, I think you're on mute. You're muted.
Okay, maybe we can get back to him or her later. So next would be Shelley. But I don't see Shelley's icon on the screen, so.
Yeah, it's possible dropped off since the beginning of the meeting, because we're down. We had 15 people. We're down to 14 now. So I think that's probably what happened.
Mm. And so, how about Deepak?
Yeah, hi, I'm Deepak. I contract for Slack, and I've been working on the Electron project for some time. I'm interested in, like, right now we embed Node as a shared library in Electron alongside Chromium. So I'm interested in seeing, like, if there are any common stuff that can be taken out. Like right now we have a number of patches to make it embeddable as a shared library. So my main interest is to see if we can cut off some of those patches, like if other embedders are also facing those same problems. And yeah.
Thank you. So I think we can go to our next agenda. Is I think
Actually, do you just want to see if you give Yulong another chance?
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you.
Yeah, Yulong, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I work for the Node.js project, which is aiming to enable the multi-thread capability in Node.js. So my interest is have some overlap with Anna's. So it's about to support the worker or say the multi-thread for the add-on. This is a part of what I am interested in. Regarding the embedding Node.js, I think there's some part that the common part for the worker support and the embedding support.
Yeah. Okay.
That's important.
Okay. Thank you, Will. And thank everyone. And I think we can jump to the agenda. I think we can go to the use case, and I think this is a bit most of people concerned about it because you're here to talk about that your use case. And from what I heard so far is that people use Node.js as a shared library, and then embedded the Node.js into applications. So I heard several perspectives. One is that they want to have a better an API to integrate the Node.js into their product as a shared library. That's the first one. And the second one is that because Node, I know is right now is single threaded for the main worker. So I'm not talking about the libuv. So for the JavaScript execution is a single thread. And I think Anna is working on to enable the workers right now. And some of you are also interested in enable the worker on the Node.js. Because I think the main reason is that when you embed the Node.js in your application, you definitely want to maybe run allow the Node.js to process more than one request at the same time. So that's why maybe I guess that's why the main reason you want to enable the worker in the Node.js. And I think natively Anna is working on it. So maybe right now you also try to enable the worker API in the Node.js. Some of you, I heard that. I think we can also collaborate your efforts and maybe work together to improve the Node.js to improve the worker API. That's the one thing. Yeah. So, and another thing is that I also saw someone's comment on our GitHub issues say he interesting about this because he tried to build a Node.js development package in the Debian. So maybe we also want to provide some documentations or package for them to easier to build their package for the, for example, the Node.js dev package for the Debian, something like that. I think that's the usage I heard from you so far. Do you want to, anyone, you can jump in. Feel free to interrupt me and or raise your hand to say your test case, because we can list test case here. Then we can deep dive into your use case more later.
Yeah, I might add. I think we're going to have difficulty covering all the use cases and getting into the a deep dive today in one meeting, but maybe we can talk about how we think to, like, how should we best collaborate to capture the use cases and maybe then build some requirements and APIs out of that, or even do people agree that that's a good approach to trying to, get to the end goal of better, a better embedding support within Node.js, or are there other ideas that are better ways to try and get there?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Michael, so we will mainly focus on gathering the use case here today. I mean, for these items. So maybe we can try to. How about we create an issue in our user feedback? Then people can put their use case in and detailedly describe the use case in there. Is that good for all of you?
We also have a section in the document. We could just maybe add it there, right?
Which document?
Yeah, the Google Doc. It says list top level use cases. Well, let's list them then, right?
Right. Do we think?
Okay.
Yeah. So we could dive in and try and list those out today. I like the idea of having an issue which goes into the details, but maybe if we just list out just a top level list, and then we can have people take actions to go and fill them out,
Yeah, and we can later add the issue in a bracket at the end of the bullet
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Mhm.
So we had the simply building it as a shared library, right? That's one of them.
So just so that to quantify that a little bit. So is that specific enough? Is there maybe is there different ways to build it and embed it that are interesting to people? Shared library is one. Are there other ways that people build it and embed it into their applications?
Yeah, I think Mike has a good question because, for example, when I use the Node.js as a shared library, actually we still have different use cases. For example, the Node.js can directly use the standard in and standard out as the input to run their JavaScript, right? So that's one way to embed the Node.js and run the JavaScript in their application. But another way is that you build the Node.js as a shared library into your applications, and you took the Node.js shared library as a runtime. For example, maybe people create a bunch of the shared library worker pool. So when I need to run a JavaScript snippet, I will randomly pick the shared library from the pool and run the JavaScript code there. It's sort of web application, web transaction handling applications use case. That's what I thought. So I think maybe in the shared library case, we also have many different use cases. So I think it's good for you to maybe list down the use case detailedly for your use case.
Just to add to that,
yeah,
maybe it's that and maybe it's useful to go through those to start. Is that under packaging, there's a couple of variations. Shared library is one. I think I've also there's also been interest in static library that then people link in.
Yeah.
Are there other ones that people the people here are using and think are important?
Well, for iOS, we are using a static library, but then building a framework, an Xcode framework, which is like a shared library for the iOS case. But it's not directly a shared library from the Node build. It's part of it.
Okay, so basically for you, the static library is the important one.
I mean, maybe putting it that way, a couple of us, especially Johan, have put a lot of work into making shared and static libraries work. Is there anybody here who tried that and found found it too hard or found the results unsatisfactory in some way? Because if not, then we don't really need to talk about it, right?
No, if those two are the, it's basically we need to deliver as a shared library and a static library, and they're currently being built. We might want to at some point talk about testing and stuff, but unless that's sort of, are there any other variations that we should think about?
I'm curious in the shared library being used as a thread pool case. How is Node.js thread safe, right? I mean, if you're using multiple instances of Node.js, the only JavaScript you can execute is pure JavaScript, because I know for a fact that as it stands, the native add-on loading is not thread safe, so you wouldn't be able to safely load native add-ons. So can you elaborate on the thread pool use case a little more? What are the restrictions on that use case?
Sorry, but I'm not very familiar with those the add-on loading part. But Michael, do you know about the add-on loading part?
I think Gabriel was asking somebody, and I can't remember who on the call here mentioned that was one of their use cases, I think. And so it's a question to that person if they're here with us. I don't know if that was as in the introduction. I don't remember it, but whether maybe it's in the issue itself.
No, but when we listed the use of Node.js as a shared library, there were two different sub-use cases of the shared library use case that were mentioned. There was the one where it has access to standard input, standard output, and so it's basically just it's a singleton at that point. Node.js is a singleton within a larger application, and then there was the use case mentioned where it is used as sort of where the application is an entry point to a thread pool, and it allows execution in parallel of several JavaScript snippets, and so in a Node.js environment. And so I'm curious about that second use case as to how you prevent how you prevent it from loading like native add-ons. Are those available in the environment? Because if they are, then that's not very safe as it stands, as far as I know.
Oh, I think, Michael, yes, I do mention about the second scenario, but I just curious about that usage because there's the use case in my mind, so I just speak it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was already applied in that sense, like that. Okay, so it is a valid use case, and it is something that we should enable, is what you're saying. Is that correct?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's one of the valid test case, and I think because of people has different use cases, so it is better to for us to put those test case down, then we will have better idea how to improve the Node.js to achieve those use cases, right?
I think maybe one of the things we should come up with is a clear concept of what a Node.js instance is and what its life cycle is, because I think that will help us solve a lot of these a lot of the problems with considering Node.js to be sort of a well-defined entity. You know, and when you stop it, it is as if it had never existed, and when you start it, you get the full power of Node.js, NPM, native add-ons, and everything it has to offer. So, you know, we have to make it cut and dried, because right now inside Node.js, we have things like, we have the environment, we have the node namespace, and we have the event loop, and we have an API, we have modules loading, and there's no way to sort of stop it all, you know, because it is assumed that you know, when the process exits, that will stop it all. So, you know, if we could create like a clear container around Node.js with like an on-off switch at the very least, then that should help us a lot, I think, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where some of the overlap that, like Anna mentioned, probably comes into play, and that you need something similar for workers.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just agreeing with Michael. That's all. Go ahead.
Okay, so I mean, if you're asking about what the concept of a single Node.js instance is, then I think the answer is like one instance of the environment class. And I don't know if you've seen the PR. I mean, like, it's been open. It has been open for a while. It's landed now, but Node.js does clean up all its resources that are related to one environment when that environment is destroyed. So like we do have at least that now, which we didn't have for a long time. But that kind of like puts a clear boundary on what the lifetime of a Node.js instance is.
Okay. So now all we have to worry is about threat safety within that environment and within the lifecycle of that environment. Is that correct?
I mean, like, there are some rough edges, because like some things are like on the V8 side are per isolate rather than like per context or something like that.
Yeah. So okay, so that's I guess that would be my next question, is then if the node environment is so well defined now, then is it one-to-one with an isolate, or is it one-to-one with the context?
Okay, so the general idea is, and like, we're not that, like, the problem is that in real life in Node.js, it's one-to-one with an isolate. Like if we were not talking about the embedded use case, generally, we can have like one isolate per thread. We can have multiple environments per isolate, and we can have multiple contexts per environment.
Yeah.
Right, and I think a part of defining the life cycle is we may want to detach some of this from V8 specific terminology. So that and explain like what's the impact of it being, in a particular way. Like, is it that if they're in different isolates, it means one thing versus in different environments and that kind of thing.
Right, and like one of the other issues with like that separation is that we don't really have like, so like we could have multiple event loops per isolate, which then map one-to-one to environments, or like multiple environments per event loop. Like we don't have any clear idea around that, but I don't think it's really problematic at this point either.
What is the minimum that we need to have, right? I mean, we need to have one isolate, one event loop, and one environment for any of this to work, right?
Yes.
And then for VM support, we need to have multiple contexts within that single isolate, right?
Right.
So if we define this to be a node instance, then we can serve these up, and they are extremely well separated from one another. Is that not correct?
I mean, like well separated sounds like we're in a good position, which we are not really, but
well,
like
yes.
Conceptually, yeah.
Yeah, we will assume that they are well separated, and then we will fix all the bugs that say otherwise.
I think like if we could get the use cases, like I don't know, and maybe there's only a small set of them or one, but like if we had the use case that said I need to be able to do X, and it because that would bring in like, well, do you have multiple different threads, not different threads? Because I suspect some of those use cases maybe we can handle today, but then maybe some of the other ones we can't.
Yeah, I'm thinking especially for Electron, right? I mean, I'm not sure if Electron is multi-threaded, but I do know that there are multiple. There is the concept that each tab has its own JavaScript world. Now, at what level that is separated from the other ones? If I remember correctly, it is a context for each tab in Electron, right? If I remember correctly. So that is one level of separation, right? Whereas a separate thread is about the highest level of separation you can get, because then you need a new isolate, you need a new event loop, you need everything anew. And
but
so this clear boundary kind of breaks down at the point where we want to ensure that we have the kind of performance that we want to have, and we don't want to replicate too much whenever we fire up an instance, right? And so that's when the lines start to get blurred. Like, what can we reuse?
That's a good example where it's like I thought that like some of the browsers, I can't remember Chrome specifically, have multiple processes, one per tab.
Yeah.
So in that case, it would basically be a use case where you need to embed a single instance of Node effectively into that process, and that would be good enough.
That would be what we have now, right? You just embed Node as a shared library, and it is one per process, and it cannot be more than one per process.
Right, and in that case, you even likely only start it up once and stop it at the end. There might be other use cases where you need to start, even if you only have one, you need to start and stop. So sort of understanding what different variations are important to the group that we have here, I think is interesting to know where to sort of focus, focus the effort. Maybe we, from that overall list, you can come down and say, well, this is the one that's most commonly shared. So let's think about that one and see what makes sense to do if, either document that this is the way you can already do it well, or these are the challenges and work on those particular challenges.
Yeah. So I think we've got one per process. We've got that down with the shared library build.
I think it's technically possible. I'm not sure the ergonomics of like how you start the event loop, or how do you start it? How do you stop it?
Yeah.
What other lifecycle things? How do you interact with the standard in, the standard out? Do modules load properly or not? I think there's still a lot of questions around that in terms of making it easy for people to consume. So even if it's technically possible, and I'm not sure 100% on all those different areas, I think there's a fair amount of sort of work to make it so somebody can come and say, yeah, okay, I easily know how to do that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's why we're here. Then we can try to have people to add a test case like that and into the test case, and we can run it and to verify it.
Yeah, today there's testing in place that basically, builds the shared library or static library and then bundles it into a node executable and then runs the test like that. But that doesn't really, I think, cover many of the, embedding specific type things that we should be testing.
So can I just interject one thing here very, very quickly? This is Trevor Dolby again from IBM. The embedding of the Node shared library and the Node runtime itself is only one piece of the problem that we're facing. So the ability to use NPM and the binary module point that I think Roger made earlier is actually extremely important. A lot of the value that we've seen in the use of Node.js and just in general in the whole embedding story we have is the ability for customers of our products then to bring their own NPM libraries and drivers for connectivity to all sorts of different things. And that is definitely, although it is doable, it is definitely not particularly ergonomically pleasing, as I think you mentioned earlier. So I think that's another aspect. Just embedding the runtime itself is really half the battle. It gets us to the starting line for providing value to our customers. So I don't know if we're unusual in this. Obviously, Chrome and the browsers have a different story, I guess, behind this. But for a lot of products, I think they might hit the same issues we've hit.
Yeah, we definitely have the same issues on mobile. In addition to that, we have to npm install and potentially compile native modules for a different platform. So there's cross compilation to be added to that.
Right.
And for that, we use additional tooling that we ship with the Cordova React Native plugin. So it's not easy to do if you just want to use a Node library at the moment.
So that's where if we could pull those things, I could see the very simplest use case that comes to mind is, I can load Node.js as a shared library. I can run a script, which is pure JavaScript. And I can do that once, right? And then maybe, there's a use case where I can do that multiple times. Then, what you're getting into is I have a use case where I want to be able to load it, as a shared library, but I want to be able to, I don't know if you need to, there'd be variations where do you actually need to be able to npm install as part of your processor? Can you do that offline? So there's sort of just the npm installation piece. There's also then I can use those modules that have been installed, right?
So just to fill in the gaps for where we're coming from, we expect to see NPM run offline effectively, not in line in the process that's doing the embedding. We expect the file system to have been set up before they even start. And at that point, our interest is in being able to use the modules and actually load everything up. And especially on Windows, where it does get proc adder, I think, and tries to find registration endpoints in the Node executable, that's provided us with some challenges. So it's definitely the situation where NPM is offline and then the usage is embedded.
Right. Yeah.
Alexis, in your case, is it the same or different?
It's the same, specifically because on iOS, you cannot run npm install. You cannot download and run new code. So on Android, in theory, you could do it either way. But because of the iOS restriction, we force it to do it at build time. So you build your application, you embed all your modules in the application.
And then they start up.
And then, you just require stuff. So I see this embedding thing to be very specific to the type of application and platform that you run on.
So have you had? I understand the problem on Windows about it being very specific to where it finds the symbol. I've seen that happen on Windows. But what about iOS? Are you able to load the native modules on iOS once you have prepared them offline?
Yes, we're able to load them, but there were some significant changes. They have to be built as frameworks instead of libraries. So there was some significant hacking that we did. We had to do some changes to Node.js. They're living in a fork right now.
Okay. So you're saying you have to like make changes to like what is that addon.jippy and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
John would have all the details. Yeah, the interesting part that might be generalized here is that npm install needs to work cross-platform. Like the platform you're gonna build your app and where you run your app might not be the same.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so I can imagine this being something that we can fix inside Node.js. Like right now, you have like a target type, right? Inside Node.js, and if you leave it out, I mean, you can say like shared library, static library, executable, etc. And if you say nothing right now, then by default it's a Node.js module, right? But we could add another one which is not default, which is like I don't know, call it like embedded or something. And
there's a loadable module already.
Right, but does that serve your purpose?
Well, it's the one we are using currently.
Okay, so if you just set your target type to that, then you get the module in the format you need for iOS. Is that correct?
After the changes we did, so that it builds as a framework.
Okay. But those
also,
changes...
regarding the symbols, you mentioned a bit back. On Android, it's not able to find the symbols unless you link the loader module with the shared library, the shared node library. The
statically
on Android doesn't work the same time.
Okay, so on Android it has to be statically linked.
No, it has to be linked when you are building the module. It has to be linked to the shared library for Android, the node library.
Oh, I see. Okay. So like with LDD would show it afterwards.
Yeah, it creates an elf header to say that it depends, okay. And that's the only way that it will actually be able to find the symbols from Node.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, let me write this down. Okay, so iOS you need to say loadable module, and on Android it's LDD, or otherwise it will not. So yeah, so DL open doesn't really work on Android. I mean, it works, but it doesn't resolve the symbols unless unless the dependency is stored in the SO.
It's able to find the symbols from the application, the actual Android application, just not any other loaded library.
Yes. Okay.
So when people try to run native modules with they compile the executable for Android, they are able to load native modules, the built-in on Android, because they are on the actual application, the symbols.
Okay.
When they are on another shared library, they are not on the global space.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. So that's why you need to add the dependency at link time.
So we only have about 8 minutes left. I'm thinking maybe we should spend some of that time on like, what do we want to do going forward in terms of, working together and pushing this forward?
Oh yeah. So let me say my thought first. I think because I think most of people can access the user feedback report, right? So maybe we can create a issue there to check down the use case first, also combine. I think we can use the input in the Google document here as the base, and then we can put our use case into that issues, and then we can deep dive into each test case, and maybe we can also try to list out the features we need to fulfill those use cases, right?
Right. I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
is everybody on the call here willing to sort of document the use case or use cases that they need or think are important?
I think what would help from my perspective is understanding what level of detail would be useful to you. So having like an example would really help me phrase it in a way that'd be useful to you.
Yeah, I could try taking, I could try taking a number that, I think we can start very high level. Just to say, like I was saying before, something like, I want to load as a shared library and then specify a JavaScript file to, script to be run that contains pure JavaScript and have that execute. And I guess, return, even say return a single value. And that's probably like, the very simplest use case. And then we can build on from that. It's like, okay, well, no, I want to be able to do that same thing, but have that be able to, run JavaScript from native modules. And then, I'm sure there's a whole bunch that I'm not even aware of, but I could do a first cut at writing up a couple of those if that helps.
I was just wondering, like, in our CI build, do we build on Android and iOS?
No.
No.
Okay,
that's not one of the supported platforms. So.
Okay, I see. So okay, but I mean, for embedded, it is ending up in iOS and Android.
Embedded in my mind is not that specific. It's like any platform where you want to use Node.js, not use the Node.js exe.
Okay, no, I understand.
Yep.
But okay, so we have Android and iOS because of the specific add-on massaging that you need to do before it can be loading, right? But we have the same thing on Windows as well, right? You need to build the add-on differently if it is expected to link against a Node shared library versus a Node process. So that's also an embedding scenario where we could maybe simplify the tooling or at least incorporate some of the tooling that was written into the project so that you can recognize so that NPM can recognize the platform just as it recognizes OS 10 versus Windows versus Unix, right? You could also recognize that this is a platform or this is going against a shared library, irrespective of the platform, and so therefore the final shared object has to be differently structured. So if you built Node with shared, then that flag has also to be transmitted to Node.js essentially. Like, yes, build my module, but don't build it to load against an executable. Build it to load against a shared library. So then that might be a change to Node.js, right?
I would even step back though and say, does it need to be different? And
well, it does.
That immediately means you can't share modules that were built one place, one way, and you're now restricting how they can be used. So if you've got pre-builts, they won't necessarily be able to be used by somebody who's doing an embedding.
Well, if we look at it as another degree of freedom, in that okay, you have platforms, right? You have architectures, and now you have shared versus executable. Then you do have restrictions even now, right? Because I mean,
I'm just saying I don't think we should assume that they have to be different and work. My first thought would be, is there anything we can do to make it so that they don't have to be different?
It might be possible, at least on Windows, but I don't think it would work out of the box right now.
I agree. It may not work, but it's more was like, is it that we think it's just impossible to work, or is it?
It's a goal to keep in mind, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
With the NAPI and the precompiled modules, if we can avoid adding another dimension or build for library or build for executable.
Right. Yeah. I mean, unification is definitely, definitely the goal, but you are telling me that it is currently not possible because of this, for example, this LDD thing or the Windows thing where it looks for a specifically named binary. So this right now makes it impossible to use the same module against a node executable and a node shared library. So I'm not sure if we can make the node executable act more like a shared library. I don't know if we can do that and convince, for example, the Android library loader that satisfies the criteria mentioned in the ELF header. I don't.
I think it's possible to try. I mean, it's conceivable. Like on Windows, you can try to call load library or load module on the executable and load the symbols dynamically, maybe.
So we really are running out of time. We've got 1 minute left, and I think we it's probably at this point it's like we need to sort of figure out, okay, what's our next step, and we could schedule another meeting. We can do some work through GitHub, and how do we do that? What do we focus on as the next step is really, I think, what we should agree on.
Yeah, Michael and everyone here, I think I think it's still good to list down the use case, and then we will try to, for example, if we have 3 use case written down in the issues, then we can have follow-up meetings, and against that, those specific use cases, each one by each one, then the person who are interested in this use case can join the meeting, right? I think it will be a good approach to continue.
Does that sound good to everybody?
Agree.
Yeah,
that's good.
Cool. Okay, so if is any there was one comment that some examples would be useful. Does anybody else have any things we should try and do to facilitate you being able to write down your use cases?
Mm-hmm.
So I can take the action to, try and write a couple. They may not be great. They may not even be, but it'll be something on paper you can look at and go from there. And if everybody could then do that, what's the kind of timeline that we should give ourselves to make a first cut at that?
I think just try to describe the use case as detailed as possible. Then I think that will also bring the people who are interested in this topic for the further discussion.
I think one other thing that might be useful is there are some things that we found that aren't really use cases, but they're things that we found difficult about the current way we embed. I wonder if it's useful to share some of those to see if we might be just doing things in a way that can be done better and therefore improved in Node. I think they don't really fit into use cases.
More like pain points.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. A list of those as well.
Yeah.
I mean, all these shared library issues and this Node.js related stuff. This is definitely pain points, right? Because I mean, it does work, but not easily.
Okay, so the next action is we'll try and offline collaborate on both the list of use cases, a list of pain points. Is that do we give ourselves, say, 2 weeks to do that and get back together, or 3 weeks? People have, if we said 2 weeks, is that anybody think that's too short, too long?
I'd favor a weekly meeting, honestly, because that format seems to work in NAPI.
So are people available, willing to get together at that interval just to get started even? why don't we, because we are over time, why don't we open an issue where we discuss that? Then, you know, maybe that's the way we can handle that is open an issue, discuss the interval of how often to get together. And so we'll do that. We'll then collaborate in the meantime on those two other things, and then based on the outcome, decide when we get back together. Does that sound good to everybody?
Sounds good.